Let's take a deep dive into project statuses. If you are setting up your project statuses for the first time, or especially if you are auditing your project statuses, this is a must-watch end-to-end overview into your project statuses and what they should and should not contain. When we're looking at project statuses are going to represent where the project is in its life cycle. It's an indicator to you, to the rest of the business, as to where the project is. What a lot of people miss is that it should also show who is responsible for that project when it is in that status. So project statuses should also tie to the responsible party. Additionally, it's going to show if there's a blockage or if something is happening where the project cannot proceed. So they're not just labels, they carry a lot of meaning, and they should also carry accountability. And that's what we're going to build in through this. Whenever you have statuses, they should prevent miscommunication. They should mean that you aren't blaming one department versus another. It should be really clear as to who is responsible for which projects when they're in certain statuses. And it's going to make sure that there's financial controls as well. Projects, especially fixed fee projects where you're collecting a down payment, have some financial and operational controls that we need. So we're going to talk about those as well. When you are changing a status, or when there is a change between one status to another status, it should be one of three reasons. The first is a change in responsibility. So a new project, and new should be sort of that default status. When a project gets converted and it goes into a new status, somebody should be responsible for checking it. And if you are in a larger organization and that is a sales admin, not yet a project manager, you could have the first status be new and then the second status be ready for PM. And what that's doing is it's taking the sales admin, it's saying, yes, this project has been checked, confirmed, all the numbers match, everything looks good. That person changes it into status number 2, ready for PM. And that's where the PM is going to pick up and move forward. Additionally, you should be able to tie your project statuses to milestones. If there's something that happens when you start scheduling your project, or if that's the point in which you reach out to the client, or sales needs to be involved because they need to talk to the client, whatever the case may be, if there is a milestone that you need to communicate externally, there should be a status aligned with that as well. Finally, the third reason to change a status is there's a conditional progression. So this is what we're talking about with fixed fee projects. If you have a status called down payment received, then that is the first status where procurement can purchase. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Those are called stopper statuses. So if you have a status called down payment received, procurement should never buy anything on a project until it hits that status. And this is the top tip, number your status. So let's say down payment received is status number 5. Now procurement knows that they never need to look at anything that's 4 or lower, which is great. You can filter that way. You can look at only things that are higher than a status number 5. These stopper statuses, these do not pass go, can help you align across your business if there are certain things that need to happen before the project can move to the next phase. And this is going to help prevent that sort of mushiness that happens when you have projects. Sometimes what I see is that there's 20 statuses, only about 6 are getting used, and the 6 statuses that are getting used aren't really where the project actually is. It's sort of around that stage. You don't want that. You want a clear delineation between each of your statuses so that when you look at a status, you're confident as to what the project is actually going through at that exact moment. There's also handshake status transitions. One thing I see is that if there is a status like down payment required, There should also be a handshake status saying down payment collected. This sometimes doesn't happen. So if it goes down payment required and then it goes straight into installation, well, when did procurement buy their things? That is sometimes a little bit stressful for whoever has the job in between the two statuses, because then there isn't an opportunity for us to notify them to do their job. So every status that is a question, have we collected the down payment, should have an answer. And this is where I do actually add statuses. Fewer status usually is better, but you should have a handshake between those big questions. When you're implementing your statuses or when you're building your statuses, build them in an external document. So take your statuses, export them out of ConnectWise, see what they are now, then list out what your actual project flow is. Beside each of them, write out in plain English what the project is actually doing in that individual status. Have a meeting where you talk with everyone who's involved about what each of the statuses mean to make sure you're on the same page. Ideally, you should also say what work role is responsible for putting the project in that status and who's responsible for taking it out of that status and moving it to the next status. So make sure that you know as you go through exactly who's responsible for each status and that you're not dropping the ball. Once you're happy with those, you can put those back into ConnectWise. Remember that they're tools. You can build automations off of a project status. You can notify people or teams. And you can also use them as a really tight financial control. So it's worth going through and making sure you're happy with your project statuses and testing them for a little while, tweaking as needed before you set them in stone.